All righty. Welcome back. Happy Thursday. Old Joe, and I emphasize old Joe because it's a little bit weird. He's getting so old. Gave his farewell speech yesterday, and it went just about how you would have expected it. A lot of lies, plenty of stuttering, and lots of fear-mongering about our nation's future. I have an in-depth breakdown for you coming up later in the show, but I wanted to start off today with a little clip from the president's speech that has fueled quite a bit of controversy over the last 24 hours. Listen.
After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be.
Oh, that's why I told my team to do this, and that's why we laid this bull crap, Joe. It had nothing to do with you, your plan, your team, your BS kowtowing, bowing to Saudi leaders. You're full of crap. It had nothing to do with you. When Trump said, if I win this election and you don't release the hostages, all hell will break loose. His words. You think it had to do with Biden and that weak foreign policy crap State Department that showed their weakness in capabilities with the horrible withdrawal from Afghanistan or any other thing they did, sending pallets of money to Iran? Had nothing to do with that. It was because Donald Trump was coming into office in 4 days. That's why the hostages are being released. That's why there's a ceasefire. And if I need to prove it any further, let's not forget in 1979, when Ronald Reagan was taking over in January 20th of 1980, for 444 days, hostages were being held by the Iranians. 444 days. They were released on Inauguration Day when Ronald Reagan came in because he said it, and they knew he was going to blow them to smithereens if they didn't release the Americans. Same thing here. They've been gone for 466 days. They've been held in captivity in Hamas, in Gaza, wherever the hell they are, at Hezbollah or in Iran, wherever they were. They were released 4 days before Trump takes. They were being safe. They didn't want to wait till Inauguration Day. Stop it, Joe. Joe Biden is taking a last-minute victory lap about the deal, yet everyone, including Netanyahu, knows that this was because Trump was coming. Biden had 466 days to get this done, but he didn't. We have a lot more on this later in the show, as well as the debut of Throwback Thursdays here on Bolling, which we will kick off with a bang. Here's a little bite of it.
And sensationalizing
from a guy who likes to sensationalizes everything.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
You're lucky that you're my friend. I'd knock you out right now.
Well,
that's absolute BS.
We can take this up later.
All right, more of that heated throwback at the end of the show today. But first, we got plenty more to discuss. So as always, let's react. Okay, let's start off with some great news, shall we? Again, I'll just show you guys on radio. I'll try to explain this to you. Daniel Penny is back on the subway, the New York subway, which is probably the only thing that has been done, literally, intentionally, or not, to make public transportation safer in New York. Daniel Penny back on the subway. We're showing a picture of that. A rigged and corrupt system put that man through hell. There isn't much to dwell on here. I'm just glad things worked out the way they did. Speaking of rigged and corrupt, Jill Biden, Dr. Jill, I should say, right? And I'm doing air quotes if you're on radio. Air quotes, Dr. Jill Biden absolutely tore into Nancy Pelosi, essentially accusing Pelosi of leading the coup to yank old Joe off the ticket last year. Jill said she's been, quote, thinking about a lot of relationships when she mentioned Pelosi. She kept it blunt, adding, we were friends for 50 years. It was disappointing. Woo! Dr. Jill seemingly hates everyone these days. We've seen the hostile dynamic between her and Kamala. We now see that she hates Nancy Pelosi too, and she must hate her husband. She wanted him to basically die in office, strictly so she, Jill, Dr. Jill, could retain power. behind closed doors, Jill Biden is an absolute monster. She let her mentally impaired, debilitating husband run himself into the ground so that Dr. Jill, could enjoy the perks of his job title. I'm certainly not standing up for Joe Biden here, but his wife was only ever interested in one thing. She feigns for control. She will do anything for the power. Jill will surely miss her weekly vacations, taxpayer-funded Air Force One voyages. Nobody is more upset about this election loss than Dr. Jill is. Trust me on that one. We got a lot more good news about a notorious political thug. Remember Stacey Abrams, the failed former gubernatorial candidate in Georgia, who, by the way, never, ever, ever conceded the loss that she took? Election denier. Remember her? Well, she just got absolutely hammered with the largest fine in the state of Georgia history for a nonprofit. Remember? Horrible bid for governor back in 2018. She reportedly siphoned, get this, $3.2 million from her nonprofit into her own campaign. That's a head scratcher. How do you spend $3.2 million and produce an embarrassing loss and product that she did? By the way, Kamala, $1.5 billion did the same thing. I want to move on to this Pam Bondi hearing. Folks, it's been all over the board. We saw what they did to Pete. But as usual, the lazy Democrats completely missed the mark. Even MSNBC is admitting, calling their questions clumsy. My main takeaway from Bondi's confirmation hearing was something that flew a bit under the radar. Another massive embarrassment from California was delivered by none other than Adam Shifty Schiff, the new senator out there. You would think that with everything going on in his state and a presidential transition coming up, you would really think that he would be locked into, the right position right now. He was caught, Shifty Schiff, caught taking a nap during the hearing as his Democrat colleagues embarrassed themselves yet again. Can you believe this? Sleeping on the job is one thing, but sleeping during a cabinet confirmation hearing? Give me a break. I thought Shifty Schiff was supposed to be some big-time voice for the Democratic Party. Well, at least that's how he sells himself. He should be ashamed, although I'm sure he'll have 1,000 excuses if he's ever asked why he was sleeping during the confirmation hearing. Big night the night before, I guess. Well, it's Thursday. The week is winding down. Everyone is starting to look ahead to the weekend so far. The third time in the show, I am bringing you another bit of good news just to keep the spirits high. Ready for this? Apparently, there are 200 pieces of Hunter Biden's precious artwork that have been lost in the California fires. And why is this good news? Well, Hunter Biden, he's a slime ball. And these little finger paintings that he did at one point he was using a straw to blow paint through a straw. Well, they were nothing more than money laundering tools for him, and getting the big guy some money is 10%. Remember that? So this certainly is some good news. Less art for Hunter means fewer dollars shrouded in corruption and in Hunter and Joe's bank accounts. One more before we go, and this is a good one. Does anyone recognize the name Taryn Bell? Darren Bell. If not, let me introduce you to some of Darren Bell's work for the Washington Post. Bell's cartoons were eerie and disgusting, to say the least. He obsessively attacked Trump derangement syndrome, and we're showing cartoons that Darren Bell put together, attacking Trump, calling Trump and many other Republicans rapists, groomers, and Nazis. Get it? See where we're going here? Can you guess? This is where things get interesting. This hypocritical loser was just arrested for, wait for it, child porn. In fact, when authorities searched his home, they found 134 videos of child pornography, as well as AI-generated child porn simulations. You simply can't make this stuff up. That guy made a living off of maliciously and untruthfully attacking Republicans, calling them rapists and pedophiles. Yet he was the predator all along. Good on you, FBI, for finding them. 4 more days, folks. Just 4 more short days until the Don takes over, and animals like Darren Bell are going to be exiled from society. All right, folks, as I said yesterday, Bob Unanue, the CEO and founding family of Goya Foods International Conglomerate, major food company, our biggest sponsor. We love them. Follow Bob Unanue on his Twitter account and everywhere else. Great guy, really spiritual guy, pro-Trump, patriotic, and I think his family came from Spain, but it absolutely loves America. In 2021, Goya launched Goya Cares, a global initiative to protect children and educate children on mental health. Goya Cares is providing schools and community centers with a preventative education curriculum and a free assembly that includes the viewing of the Goya Cares Press Pause short film. Press Pause is intended to raise awareness regarding mental health issues, abuse, and bullying among children, teens, and in our communities. Press Pause is an educational film following 15-year-old Sofia Rodriguez as she navigates adolescence, self-doubt, and an abusive relationship amid her parents' turbulent divorce, set within the cultural context of her Hispanic family. The film explores her discomfort with unwanted attention from her uncle and the pressures of maintaining a facade of perfection in high school. It introduces the Press Pause campaign, promoting kindness and advocacy, highlighted by Sofia leaving a note saying, "You matter," for a bullied peer. The film encourages open family communication and mental health and culminates in Sofia's transformative realization of her right to seek help through the power of empathy and small acts of kindness. Press Pause displays the importance of being proactive in supporting one's community and underscores the critical importance of self-advocacy. Alrighty, now, time for today's Truth Bomb. Okay, let's do this. So the control room understands, always truthful, always honest. I want to start the truth bomb with Joe Biden taking credit, taking a victory lap for releasing the hostage that's sought to.
After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team.
Which is all BS, and I'll prove it's BS. First of all, he had 466 days to do this. It's very interesting with 4 days prior to Trump being sworn in that these hostages, a ceasefire and the hostages, including Americans, are going to be released. 466 days to do it. He takes credit for it when Trump is coming in. When Trump emphatically said, "You better release the hostages or else." Listen to this.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East.
And then he went on another time to say all hell will break loose like the world has never seen before on your ass, Iran. That's why the hostages were released. It wasn't Hezbollah, it wasn't Hamas, it wasn't Gaza. It was Iran telling Hamas to release the hostages because Trump was coming into town. And I will give you this example again. Jimmy Carter, president, in 1979, hostages were taken from the Olympics for 444 days. The very day that Ronald Reagan was sworn in, January 20th, 1980, those hostages were released the same day. They don't want to mess with a Republican president with resolve. Ronald Reagan in 1980, Donald Trump in 2024. Here's your truth bomb, folks. The reason those hostages are going to get released is because of Donald Trump, not lame-ass Joe Biden. Truth bomb. Lies, mumbling, deflection. Yes, this was the, finally, farewell speech that made us all collectively sigh a deep breath of relief. Let's go through this little thing they did last night in true Bolling fashion, meaning unlike the mainstream media stooges, we're not letting this jerk off the hook and talk nice. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's start with the fact that this was a video they played out that the geezer-in-chief didn't even deliver live. There were excerpts of this floating around the internet all day yesterday before he even delivered it last night. This little itty-bitty speech of his wasn't live off a teleprompter. That's how nervous they were that Joe would somehow F it all up. So the cover-up continues right to the bitter end. Listen.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office.
All right, let's just stop right there for 1 second. My fellow Americans, really? Does that also include, remember, the garbage Trump supporters that we are, the other half of the, more than half now because you lost the election, proof, Joe, because we know you're not speaking to us. You're talking to your 40% or whatever that is. Moving on now to the first big lie of the night, folks.
After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, my administration, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team.
Yeah. Okay. After 8 months, you did nothing. You achieved nothing. Nothing. 0.0. They had 466 days. Joe, stop with the crap that you negotiated this ceasefire. This is all because of Trump. Terrorists held hostages captive for well over a year, including Americans. And all you did, Joe, is stop Netanyahu whenever possible from taking down the terrorist jackals who started this war in the first place. The terrorists. Also, the plan you laid out in May of this year, well, it's now 8 months later. Are you kidding me? You're going to take credit for that? Why didn't they accept your plan back then? Because no one respects you, Joe. Not to mention this uncomfortable little tidbit right here.
When it comes to the involvement of President-elect Trump's team, it has been absolutely critical in getting this deal over the line.
Thank you for clarifying that point. Biden's State Department stooge, thank you for letting us know that Trump's team was critical in getting the deal done, but also the peacetime president is nearly back, and also something about release the hostage or there will be, what was it? Hell to pay like the world has never seen before. Because the only time Joe Biden ever had choice words like those, they were directed at his own countrymen. You know, us or parents or white people or MAGA, ultra MAGA, MAGA extremists. Remember all that? Okay, let's see what's next. Well, after a long story about the State of Liberty, which France can have, Statue of Liberty, which France can have back now, that everyone keeps using it as some sort of excuse to bring in criminals and invaders to our country. That Statue of Liberty, bring anyone in. We'll take you're tired, you're homeless, right? Joe Biden said this.
But we know the idea of America, our institution, our people, our values that uphold it are constantly being tested. Ongoing debates about power and the exercise of power, but whether we lead by the example of our power or the power of our example, whether we show the courage to stand up to the abuse of power or we yield to it. After 50 years at the center of all of this, I know that believing in the idea of America means respecting the institutions that govern a free society.
First of all, did he slur enough of those words? I'm like trying to pick that apart. What are you trying to say here? Do we yield to attempt to control us? You mean like when we're forced to wear masks? Remember that? Remember that power you tried to exert on us? Did we yield? Well, we had to, right? Or else? You said it. Like when we're forced to get a vaccine, or else what? Our jobs are threatened unless you get to control us like that? Or when you stifle free speech, our First Amendment, by working together with social media platforms to silence any opinion that doesn't suit your narrative about COVID, about your son and his disgusting laptop from hell, and whatever he did with hookers and prostitutes and drugs and hotel rooms, or that critical race theory, remember CRT? Or drag queens story hour for little kids, sexualization of our children in schools. You were okay with that. We were told to be okay with that, or we're homophobic. Remember that? Do we yield to those types of power and control over us, Joe? Should we yield to that? Or do you mean like when you try to pry our guns from us? Also, a protected constitutional right, God-given right. Do we yield, Joe? Well, hell no, we don't. We do not. We fire your ass. That's what we do. And when you and your commie friends use our own institutions against us, deep state, and against your own political opponent, deep state, lawfare. It doesn't feel like the free society you just mumbled on and on about now, does it, Joe? But sure, come on, go on. Let's hear another piece.
And every day I've kept my commitment to be president for all Americans through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history.
Well, every day, because you're on vacation for at least 40% of the time. Nearly 600 days of vacation. So it's not really every day now, is it? And well, the toughest period was you. It was all you. You can't really help us get through what you created. Now, can you? And by the way, you were president for all Americans? Because I remember you calling us garbage. People who are Trump supporters or not your supporters or Kamala's supporters, we were garbage. In fact, I remember a big garbage truck that Trump drove and sat in because you called us garbage. But you were my president, were you, Joe? Sure. Go on.
I've had a great partner in Vice President Kamala Harris. It's been the honor of my life to see the resilience of essential workers getting us through a once-in-a-century pandemic. The heroism of service members and first responders keeping us safe.
Great partner, he says. Great partner like Kamala Harris, who got about 2 seconds of a mention in that whole 18-minute speech. I got to tell you something about great partner. You hated her. She hated you. She was the one who got you bounced out of the presidency. Stop it. Not great partner. All right, go on.
Instead of losing their jobs to an economic crisis that we inherited, millions of Americans now have the dignity of work. Millions of entrepreneurs and companies creating new businesses and industries, hiring American workers, using American products. And together, we've launched a new era of American possibilities. One of the greatest modernizations of infrastructure in our entire history. From new roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet for every American. We invented the semiconductor, smaller than the tip of my little finger. And now it's bringing those chip factories and those jobs back to America where they belong, creating thousands of jobs. Finally, giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for millions of seniors. And finally, doing something to protect our children and our families by passing the most significant gun safety law in 30 years and bringing violent crime to a 50-year low.
That's bullshit. By the way, that's a ton of bullshit, in fact. In a minute, wouldn't you say? Economic crisis you inherited? Are you kidding me? You went from 1.4% inflation to 9+% inflation. You brought it there, Joe. What about that? And you didn't invent the semiconductor. America invented it well before you were president, vice president, maybe even before you were a senator. You can't take credit for that crap. You did bring down Medicare negotiated prices for drugs. You did do that. That's something that I've been saying for 30 years we should be doing that. Republican failed, Democrat failed. You got that. But that, to be honest, and that's what we're all about here, Truth, that's about it, Joe. The rest of that stuff you said is all BS. Trump handed you a solid economy, and you destroyed it. Internet for all Americans, well, you took our money, but you didn't make that happen now, did you? Internet, you did that? What do you mean you did that? Internet for all Americans. I actually think Elon Musk might be the guy who will provide internet for all Americans with Starlink. You didn't do shit. You didn't do stuff. There's still parts of the country, a lot of the country, that doesn't even have internet yet. Crime at its lowest point in 50 years. Why are they still letting these Democrats peddle this absolute lie again and again? It's not true. You release violent, evil criminals in your pardon. You condoned leniency for criminals in our cities by doing nothing, and pardoned your own son for breaking a gun safety law that you say is supposed to protect this country's children. But sure, hold on. Wait, before we go on, I just have to say something else. I mean, are you really serious? You elevated crime. You let illegals come in here, which elevated crime. The FBI will show you that crime numbers from the period of 2016 to 2020 are up. up, substantially up. There's 0.0 truth in things this man is saying. Let's have another one. Another
We
lie.
created nearly 17 million new jobs, more than any other single administration, a single term. More people have health care than ever before. And overseas, we've strengthened NATO. We've created nearly...
Again with the jobs. Lie. Every single report fabricated. Lie, and revised after many, many months. And the more than the administration talks, the more they lie. And mainstream media just lets him get away with the lie over and over and over again. It's incredible.
This is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms.
He's talking about Musk, but I have to add to Musk, because Elon Musk is palling around with Trump right now, the oligarchy. Do you mean like Jeff Bezos? Do you mean like Mark Anderson? Do you mean like Mark Zuckerberg? Because those are pretty powerful liberal leftist tech gurus, tech dudes, who are now part of Trump world. I just heard Zuckerberg, Musk, and Bezos are going to be seated near Trump when he's sworn in on Monday at noon. I mean, most of those people, most of those folks besides Trump were liberal until recently, until maybe less than a year ago. And they probably still are liberal. That guy stood on a stage just over a week ago, Biden did, and awarded the highest civilian honor to one of the most horrendous human beings to be involved with America, George Soros, a multi-billionaire who has infiltrated every single part of our country to undermine it, our media, our businesses, our local governments, even higher. That man changed how criminals are dealt with in our major cities, giving them leniency at every turn, letting them back out on the streets, a man whose foundation funds Black Lives Matter, funds Antifa, funds pro-terrorist marches and organizations. He honored George Soros. Biden honored George Soros on a stage in front of America with the highest possible civilian honor. So don't tell us about oligarchy. Ask Nancy Pelosi about holding on to power. Oh, wait, you know all about that, don't you? When she pried the presidential candidacy right from under your grasp. All right, what else you got, Joe?
Right now, the existential threat of climate change has never been clearer. Just look across the country, from California to North Carolina. That's why I signed the most significant climate and clean energy law ever. We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. There's no time to...
You know, that was Joe talking about how he stole more of your money and gave it to his pals. That's exactly what that was. The threat from climate change has never been clearer. It should be more clear, but clearer. Joe, really? I heard about this. This is the part of the speech where he let, I don't know, some little high school dropout, little Swedish dropout Greta Thunberg write for him, I guess, before she goes back to marching for terrorists, because she did, with Palestine, the Palestinians. The greatest existential threat to the world is being eliminated in just 4 days. That's the reality. That's the only real threat, folks, we've ever really had.
Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold this.
Social media is giving up on fact-checking. You know what that is? That's Mark Zuckerberg at Meta saying, you know what? We were absolutely throttling down conservative voices. We were censoring conservatives. Hunter Biden laptop story, remember they said anyone who peddled that misinformation was going to get pulled, including the president of the United States for his misinformation on COVID, whatever. You folks were wrong. They lied. They got caught. Trump won. And now Mark Zuckerberg says, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to censor people. We're not going to judge whether it's right or wrong. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do community notes the way X does, the way Elon Musk's Twitter does. Let the community tell you if you're lying or you're wrong. And this is all really about, you know what it's really about? It's about Mark Zuckerberg not wanting to be regulated by the federal government. So he's going to try and play ball with Trump to see if Trump won't remove that Section 230, which gives social media companies a Chinese wall from litigation. Because if you say some of the things you say on Facebook, if you said it on TV, you get sued. But you don't get sued if you're on Facebook, and Facebook doesn't get sued. Fox would get sued if some of the things you post on Facebook were said on Fox News Channel. So they don't let it happen. They censor. You want to let it go on social media? They're covered by Section 230. They don't want that to go away, so now they're playing ball with Trump. That's what that part of the speech was all about. Yeah, I see what we're doing here, Joe. The social media platforms spent years doing what you told them to do. Zuckerberg told us. Zuckerberg said the Biden White House was telling them what to censor and what not to. They silenced voices, our voices, and opinions that you and your party didn't like. And then Zuckerberg, admitted they did. So now they're going to go back and try and, I don't know, prop up the First Amendment speech. Remember those things? Man, Mark Zuckerberg has them rattled, doesn't he? They're so nervous about the truth coming out, you've almost got to wonder just how damning and damaging it really is. I can't wait till it all comes out, until Zuckerberg really spills all the beans. Or Jack Dorsey from Twitter days. The biggest liars in the world love to warn us about disinformation. All right, Joe, how about another one?
We need to enact an 18-year time limit, time and term, for the strongest ethics reforms for our Supreme Court. We need to ban members of Congress from trading stock while they're in the Congress. We need to amend the Constitution to make clear that no president is immune from crimes that he or she commits while in office. The president's power is not limited.
Okay, so what he's doing there. That was a jab at Trump, wondering why Trump wasn't thrown in jail. That was fine. But here's the most operative part of that. Did you hear how he stumbled through all those things? That wasn't a live speech. That was a pre-taped speech. That was done prior to the delivery on the networks, which means that guy is so gone, they couldn't even fix it. They're probably so disgusted at the end of 16 minutes, or like take 28, that they're like, screw it. I'm done with it. It was awful. It was terrible. He stumbled through it. Didn't make any sense. Lawfare guy, yeah. All right, how about this last one? Kamala Harris as a partner. This is a good one.
And our incredible partner, historic vice president. She and Doug have become like family. And to me, family's everything.
Mm-hmm. She and Doug have become like family. I mean, they got you bounced, Joe. They got you bounced. I guess Jill Biden didn't write this part, right? I know how much those besties mean to each other. Jill and Kamala, we saw them at Carter's funeral. They couldn't even talk to each other. They hated each other. They turned their back on each other. Can't wait to see how that friendship continues to blossom once this nightmare is over, once and for all. And that's it, folks. The Biden farewell speech, the perfect pile of BS for the worst president of all time. Not just our lifetime, all time. 4 days left to go. Can you feel it? The golden age is upon us. All right, folks, Throwback Thursday. It's Thursday. We are going to put this into the show, pick a fun clip of something that happened a while ago. This, I believe, was 7 or 8 years ago. And it was at Fox News on the center seat on the 5. Geraldo was sitting in for Bob Beckel, God rest his soul, as the liberal seat. And we got into it about immigration and Trump's immigration policy. And Geraldo, who is very good at throwing a punch, we know he likes to say he's a boxer. He's good at throwing a punch. He's got a glass jaw, folks. He cannot take a punch. You say something back to him, he loses his proverbial shit. Take a listen. Watch.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
You're lucky that you're my friend. I'd knock you out right now.
interest of the American
sensationalizing.
from a guy who exploits and sensationalizes everything.
Are you
really?
talking to me?
Yes.
You're lucky that you're my friend. I'd knock you out right now.
Well,
that's absolute
we
BS.
can take this up later.
A little side note, I offered to go outside with Geraldo and work it out, if you know what I mean, in the breezeway between that studio and Fox News' main studios. And, of course, Geraldo wanted no part of that. He's a big, tough guy on TV. Last straw, Geraldo. Bolling, out. See you tomorrow.